Every morning, the school bus pulled up at 7, and every morning, the driver greeted Emily with the same exact words. "Hey, sunshine. Ready to make the world better today?" She always smiled politely, mumbled, "Good morning," and walked to her seat in the middle of the bus. She was 12, polite, quiet, a little too serious for her age. Other kids were louder, laughing, tapping on phones, throwing paper balls. Emily just stared out the window. She didn't know the driver's name, just that he wore the same faded navy jacket, always had a coffee in hand, and drove gently, even over potholes. Those words, "ready to make the world better today," they felt familiar, too familiar, like something from a dream you can't quite name. 2 years earlier, Emily's mom had passed away. It was sudden, it was brutal, and Emily had stopped listening to a lot of things after that. She remembered flashes, her mother braiding her hair in the kitchen, humming off-key, her laugh echoing in the hallway, the smell of cinnamon tea. But mostly, she remembered a voice, soft, certain, full of love, whispering something just before she left for school each day. "Go make the world better today, my sunshine." After the funeral, those words vanished into silence, until the bus driver said them. Not once, not randomly, every single morning. For a long time, Emily thought it was a coincidence, a phrase some people just say. But it was the exact same words, same tone, same warmth. And it felt intentional. She wanted to ask, so many times, but the words would get stuck in her throat, tangled with grief and fear and hope. One rainy Thursday, everything changed. Emily had a rough morning. She'd forgotten her homework, argued with her dad, and left her lunch on the counter. She stepped onto the bus with wet shoes, shoulders hunched, blinking back tears. "Hey, sunshine," the driver said softly, "ready to make the world better today?" Her voice cracked. "Why do you always say that?" The bus fell silent. He looked at her in the mirror, then slowly turned around. "I used to drive your mom to school, years ago," he said quietly. "She was just like you, kind, thoughtful, always reading something. Every morning, she'd step off this bus and say, 'I'm going to make the world better today,' every single day." Emily blinked. She said if she ever had kids, she'd tell them the same thing, he added. "When I saw you the first day, I just felt like maybe someone needed to keep that promise alive." She didn't speak, but her tears did. She walked to her seat, dropped her bag, and wiped her face with her sleeve. She cried the whole ride to school, and for the first time, it wasn't because of the pain. It was because someone remembered her mom the way she did. They once swore they'd never speak to each other again, but 20 years later, one phone call changed everything. Emma and Lily were born just 2 years apart, and from the moment Lily learned to speak, the arguing began. It wasn't just about toys or clothes. They fought over everything. Who got the last cookie? Who sat in the front seat? Who mom loved more? Their parents used to joke that they were like fire and ice, destined to clash, impossible to mix. At school, teachers would raise their eyebrows when they saw the two girls' last names. "Are you two sisters?" they'd ask. Emma would roll her eyes, and Lily would groan. Unfortunately, one of them would mutter. But underneath all the shouting, slammed doors, and silent treatments, there was something else. A strange kind of loyalty neither of them understood at the time. One winter morning, when Emma was 12 and Lily was 10, a classmate made fun of Lily's worn-out shoes. Emma, who'd just been calling her sister a spoiled brat that morning, stood up without hesitation and told the boy to shut his mouth. No one messed with Lily, except Emma. Still, their teenage years were no easier. They barely spoke in high school. Emma was into books and quiet afternoons. Lily preferred loud music and late-night hangouts. They lived in the same house, shared the same parents, but moved through life like strangers. And then, college happened. Emma moved to a different state. Lily stayed behind. For the first time, they weren't forced to see each other every day, and that distance became something they both secretly needed. Years passed. They both grew up, made mistakes, worked hard. Emma became a writer, Lily a nurse. Life had softened their edges. The world had taught them things no argument ever could. It wasn't until their dad fell ill that everything shifted. Emma flew home first, sitting quietly in the hospital room, unsure what to say or do. 2 days later, Lily walked in with a bag of takeout and tired eyes. For a moment, they just stared at each other. No insults, no sarcasm. Just two daughters who loved the same man and didn't know how to say it out loud. "I brought you food," Lily said. Emma nodded, eyes misting. That was the first real conversation they'd had in years. Over the next weeks, as they took turns caring for their dad, something unexpected began to happen. They laughed at the same jokes. They cried over the same memories. They started texting each other without a reason. When their dad passed away quietly one morning, they held hands in silence. It was a moment both heartbreaking and healing. From that day on, they were never far apart, not just in miles, but in heart. Now in their 30s, Emma and Lily talk every day. They take trips together, help each other through breakups and birthdays, and still argue, just less often and with more love. They say that sisters are built in, but perhaps that's why it means so much more. Moral of the story: sometimes the strongest bonds are forged not through peace, but through storms that teach us how to hold on tighter. Every morning, Mrs. Talbot stood at the front door of her third-grade classroom, greeting each child with a smile and a kind word. But one boy, Leo, always came in quietly. He was small for his age, with big brown eyes and a mop of hair that always seemed just a bit too long. He never spoke much, never raised his hand, but he always had something in his backpack, a drawing. Each day, Leo pulled out a new picture and carefully tucked it into a folder he kept inside his desk. The drawings were always of animals, dogs, cats, rabbits, sometimes birds, and they were surprisingly detailed for a child his age. He drew them in pencil, sometimes added color, and always signed them with tiny neat letters, Leo D. At first, Mrs. Talbot didn't think much of it. Many children like to draw. But by the third week of school, she noticed something odd. Each of Leo's drawings showed a specific animal, always with a name written beside it: Max, Luna, Charlie, Bella. And every animal seemed real. There was something too alive, too personal in the way he drew their eyes. One afternoon, after class had ended, Mrs. Talbot stayed behind to tidy up and grade papers. On a whim, she opened Leo's folder. It was filled with dozens of drawings. At the back of the folder, she found a note folded neatly. It read, "I draw them so no one forgets. Some of them are still missing." The next morning, curious and concerned, Mrs. Talbot gently asked Leo about his art. His eyes dropped to the floor, and he clutched the straps of his backpack tightly. "They're all animals that are lost," he said quietly. "From the flyers." "Flyers?" she asked. Leo nodded. "Mum and I go on walks in the evening. We always see posters on the street. Lost pets. Some have been gone for months. I draw them so people remember, so maybe they come back." Mrs. Talbot felt a lump rise in her throat. A child who drew missing animals. Not for fun, but from empathy, from a quiet place of love. She asked Leo if he'd mind bringing some of his drawings to the school bulletin board. "Maybe," she said. "If others see them too, someone might recognize one." Leo smiled for the first time she could remember. Within days, the board near the school entrance was transformed. "Missing but not forgotten," read the handmade sign at the top. Dozens of Leo's drawings filled the space, each one labeled with the animal's name and a little caption. "Last seen near 5th Street. Needs medication. Very friendly." Parents began stopping to look. Teachers talked. One mother, picking up her daughter, gasped as she stared at a drawing. "That's Bella," she said. "She's been gone since spring." She took a photo of the picture, showed it to her husband that night. Inspired, they tried one last round of searching, and to their amazement, a neighbor had seen a strange news of the story spread quickly. A local newspaper ran an article, "Third grader draws lost pets, helps reunite dog with family." Soon, people began sending Leo photos of their missing pets. He started drawing them too. By the end of the semester, 4 animals had been found, 4 families were whole again. And Leo had a new reputation. The boy who never spoke much, but whose pictures spoke louder than words ever could. On the last day of school, the principal surprised Leo during morning assembly. "In honor of your big heart," she said, "and your incredible drawings, we're starting a new school tradition, Leo's Board of Hope. Every year, students will help raise awareness for lost animals in our community, inspired by your kindness." The whole auditorium clapped. Leo, red in the face but smiling wide, stood and gave a small bow. That summer, Leo kept drawing, but now his drawings weren't only of missing pets. They were also of happy reunions, smiling families, wagging tails, and one small boy who believed that even the smallest gesture, done with love, could help bring someone home. It was supposed to be just another trip to the thrift store. Old furniture, dusty books, forgotten things. Nothing special. But then, Daniel saw it. Half buried under a pile of broken toys was a small, worn-out teddy bear. Its fur was matted, one button eye was missing, and its red ribbon hung by a thread. It looked familiar. Too familiar. He picked it up carefully. The stuffing was lumpy, and its left ear was nearly detached. But when Daniel turned it over, his breath caught. 3 tiny stitched letters on the paw, D-A-N. His initials. His heart pounded. Daniel hadn't thought about the bear in years. Not since the orphanage. Not since he was 6. Back then, the bear had been everything. It was the only toy he owned. A gift from a kind woman he barely remembered. The staff said her name was Margaret, a volunteer who came once a month and always brought one handmade toy. She had handed him the bear herself. "He's soft and strong," she'd said, smiling, "just like you." Then she leaned in and whispered, "Whenever you need me, just squeeze his belly and listen closely." He'd done it dozens of times, and every time, a small recording inside said, "Hi, sweetheart, you're not alone. You are loved, always." Those words had been the only warmth on cold nights. But one day, the bear disappeared. Maybe another kid took it. Maybe it got thrown out. Maybe life just moved on. Daniel did too. Foster homes, part-time jobs, growing up fast. Now, in his 30s, with a job and an apartment of his own, Daniel stood in the middle of a dusty thrift store, holding a bear that once told him he was loved. His hands trembled as he pressed the bear's middle. Static. A faint crackle. Then, "Hi, sweetheart. You're not alone. You are loved, always." Daniel dropped to the floor. Right there, between a broken rocking horse and a bin of tangled dolls, tears streamed down his face. He bought the bear for $2.50 and took it home like it was gold. For hours, he sat in silence, holding it, pressing the button again and again, just to hear that soft, motherly voice. The next day, he opened the back seam. Inside was a tiny, old recorder taped to the stuffing, and beneath it, a note. Folded tightly, yellowed with time, it read, "If this bear ever finds its way back to you, I hope you've grown into someone kind. You were always my favorite. Love, Margaret." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He couldn't stop thinking, who was she? Was she still alive? Did she leave notes for other kids too? The next week, he drove 2 hours to the town where the orphanage used to be. It was closed now, turned into a library, but one of the older librarians remembered Margaret. "Sweet woman," she said, "didn't have kids of her own." "I brought someone," he said softly, pulling the bear from a cloth bag. Her eyes widened. She touched the bear's paw gently, as if touching a memory. "You kept it all these years?" she asked. "No," he whispered, "but somehow it came back." She laughed, then cried. And then they talked for hours about books, life, kindness, and all the things that never leave us. Daniel visited her every Sunday after that. Sometimes they sat in silence, other times she'd read aloud. He brought tea, she brought peace. And the bear, the one who whispered love when the world forgot, always sat quietly between them. Because sometimes the smallest voice from childhood becomes the loudest reminder that we mattered.